Hey guys, welcome to Now That's Debatable. This is your host, Fantastic Facade. I am joined with my trusty co-host, Triple A the Humanist, and today we have a very special guest coming on by the name of Scott. We're going to be talking about some teleological, amongst some other styles of arguments for a God and the existence of God. Just hoping to have a fun and intellectual conversation. And to all the viewers and chat, especially the last one we went live on, thank you guys for watching and subscribing. And if you have any questions, we'll try to get to those in chat as they come up when we have kind of a break in the conversation. So, without further ado, let's kick this thing off. How are you guys?
I'm chilling, man.
Wonderful.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
I was testing the audio on the yo Grim, you sound Facade, you sound like much lower.
Oh, I could turn me up.
I had a little bit of feedback from him as well there for a second. I don't know if it sounded like it was maybe catching him twice.
Is this any better? I can change it.
That sounded a little better.
I'm always quiet compared to you guys. I can just.
What's up, Joseph? What's up, Phantom X?
Turn me up.
Perfect.
Joseph, I can turn you up. I turned you guys down a little bit, and I turned me up a little bit. Hopefully that balances it.
Okay.
But I'm always kind of quieter compared to you guys, so.
Cool. Hey guys, in the chat, if the volume sounds like a little like unbalanced, just let us know.
Also, I'm just gonna adjust my camera real quick.
And let me hold on. All right. Perfect. So, Scott. All right. So, I mean, appreciate you coming on. I was about to say back on. Maybe we'll have you back on. But like, so you're a Christian. Could you tell us like a little bit about what type of Christian you are? You're Reformed or you're not? Well,
sure. Yeah, more often than not, I'm not really a fan of denominations. I mean, unless you're like way far out, but I just read my Bible.
Okay.
And that's about it. You know, like I think it's important for a lot of Christians to not find themselves attached to certain doctrines, or rather I should say people teaching certain doctrines. If it's the way I see it, if it's in the Bible, let's discuss it. If it's not in the Bible, then let's consider where it's coming from, the source, and what the purpose behind that source is.
Okay.
I think it's super dangerous to get, like, this world has been riddled with teachers across the millennia that have used the Word of God for their own benefit. A lot of evil men out there. I see so many people online talking about how, what about the Crusades, and what about these people and those people, and yeah, it's true, and those are terrible things that they did in the name of God. But had they been reading their scriptures, had they been following what God told them, they would realize real quick that what those people are teaching is not what God teaches, and certainly not what the scriptures teach.
So
Gotcha.
real quick,
Somebody in the chat wanted to know,
yeah.
do you believe Jesus is God? Facade side.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So, why do you believe in a God? Just
well, first, I don't believe in.
Okay, you say. Well, I was going to say, better yet, not your reasons specifically for believing, but what do you think should convince other people to believe?
Oh, what should convince people to believe?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, that's.
I'd assume it'd be very similar to the reasons you believe yourself, right?
Well, not necessarily. God reaches
Okay.
people at many different points of their life for many different reasons.
Okay. So what about you? Yours specifically?
Well, I mean, if I was to like give my testimony, it was simply like I was at a very low time in my life, and I was raised Christian, but I went off on a deep end, and that deep end led me into a world of alcohol and drug abuse, as well as selling drugs on the street. I was at a low point in life where I cried out to God. I was hitchhiking. Never found myself hitchhiking before. And I cried out to God, and I said, if you even exist, show me you exist. And within a minute, a guy came on the parallel road next to the freeway, and he pulls over and he flags me over, and I hop across the ditch, and he says, he tells me to get in. He drives me to a gas station, and he says on the way there, I never pick up hitchhikers, but I swear God was telling me I needed to pick you up and tell me about my church. I was like, if that's not an answer to prayer, then I don't know what is. So I started going to church at that point. Like I said, I was raised Christian, but I would say fell away from it. Truly, I wasn't never really following to begin with. I was doing the thing like praying the prayers. But that, it's all.
Is that what convinced you? Like you asked for a sign and the hitchhiker pulled over?
Good question. That's not what, for me personally. Yeah, that was a big part of it. I was at that stage where I started asking myself some bigger questions for sure. I would say that I wanted to learn to defend my faith. And it was through that process, which was where I started finding reasons on top of the faith I had already developed through what I felt was an actual miracle. Then I started developing my faith, reasons to believe on top of the fact that I already believed.
What's the best reason you got?
For why Jesus is God, or why God exists?
Or why God exists?
Yeah. Well, I do love, you guys had touched on the teleological argument right off the bat. I love that. I guess William Lane Craig is somebody that I typically followed off in the beginning with this. And so I would say that I like his first four arguments for Christ and for God. When I say first four, the ones you typically see him use in his online debates and stuff. So that would be the
Kalam a lot.
Yeah, there's the Kalam.
But the Kalam isn't an argument for God. It's actually like he thinks it is, but it's not, because if you look at the premises, there's God isn't there, and neither is it.
It's vague.
Conclusion. Well, it says, look, I would say it's not vague. It's very specific in what it's arguing for. It's just the cause, though. It's like everything that began to exist has a cause for existence. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause.
Right.
But there's no reason to say that it's God.
Okay. So, yeah, good point. Point blank, you're right. It doesn't seem to have that. But when you break down his arguments, and so he does, for instance, I'll throw a little thing out there. He's got this book. What is it actually? I've got it in my basement. Reasonable Faith. And in there, he does break down the arguments significantly more. So to just slap, the three premise, or the two premise and the deduction, or the conclusion onto it, without breaking them down. So there, he does go through and look, I'm not William Lane Craig. So to go in deep, I'm not the guy to go in super deep.
Yeah, sure. Just whatever your understanding of it is.
Yeah, I mean to be a cause of something as significant and big as the universe would mean that this thing would have to be timeless. It would have to be immaterial, and it has to exist outside of what it creates. So, if you created, if you had a box, right, and you created, or there's the box and everything in it, whatever's in it, doesn't matter what's in it, but there's something. Nothing inside of the box could have created everything in the box and the box itself. Nothing. So the creation of that box has to exist outside of the box. We are in a box. Nothing inside of it could have created it, and the box itself can't create itself.
Well,
so
I'm not sure if I'm convinced that the universe began to exist. I would say our local presentation of space-time, there's definitely a beginning of that, and that goes back to the Big Bang, right, and the expansion. Yeah. But as far as the universe itself, not our local presentation of space-time, but the universe itself, meaning past the Planck time, right? Just whatever that ball of energy was. I'm not sure if that began to exist. I'm not convinced of that.
No, and so, you can go down that route in speculation, but that's all it is. There is no science. There's nothing but vague theory
Well,
that
yeah,
goes
the science,
past.
but the science doesn't say that it began to exist. I
It
think
does, yeah.
the one who's speculating is Bill Craig on this. That it doesn't
Oh,
say that it
I
began
mean,
to exist.
he's using. I mean, I mean, you do have to look into his sources. I don't have those sources in
He's
front of me.
misquoting his sources. I
mean,
assure you. Sean Carroll called him out on this. So what the lambda CDM model states is that you get to a point about 13.8 billion years ago, and Einstein's field equations that describe gravity, they stopped working. And we know gravity played a role.
Why do they stop working then?
Because they get too small. His field equations don't like to be broken up into discrete segments, which is what the other three forces are broken into, right? You have the gluon, which is the strong interaction. You have the W and Z boson, which is the weak interaction. You have the photon, which is the electromagnetic force, right? The gravity doesn't like being broken into a particle, like into a discrete segment. It likes being really big. And when it gets really small, it stops working. That's the same reason we can't describe a singularity in a black hole. It's identical to what's going on in the Big Bang. So it's not saying this
But
is the
everything
beginning.
you just described is inside the box, right? The point is despite what mechanisms exist inside the box, despite what laws exist inside the box, and the matter and the time inside, everything inside the box had a beginning. We know it must. I mean,
we're not sure if there is an outside the box, though. What we know is there is a point where the universe is really tiny and really hot, and then after that, we can't know anything else until we come up with a more fundamental model. That's why we're working on string theory, loop quantum gravity.
So this is the beginning, right? This is the beginning.
Well,
I mean,
this is the beginning of our understanding. It's the beginning of
it's the beginning of known space and time and reality.
It's our local representation of space-time, but that's different than the beginning of where like energy and gluons and quarks and all these things that were present at the beginning of our current presentation of space-time began because they needed to exist in order for the expansion to happen.
Right, they did. That's right. So they did begin to exist, as you just said.
Well, nope, I didn't say that. I said they existed at the point of which our local space-time began.
Yeah.
So they had existed at this point already. Like they exist. They already exist when our local presentation of space-time began.
Yes.
Do these things have a beginning?
At the same time.
I don't know. That's speculation. There's no way for us to say that.
13.8 billion years ago, that's when we can start describing what's going on. That's when our models of physics begin to make sense. That's not the beginning of the universe. It's just the beginning of our understanding. Well, most scientists think you can go past this. Like all of those dudes that are working on superstring theory.
To a point, you and I both agree to this. Okay, so I'll go back to the analogy of the box. Okay, so the person or being, in this case God, that I'm using to say who described the box, that being and his power does exist outside the box, outside of the reality.
Don't know that. We have no. That is speculation.
I know that just as much as you know that particles existed prior to the beginning of space-time. You know what I mean?
Well,
so we're
prior to our
both
how do you know that?
Space-time.
Because you and I both don't have the evidence to prove that. I don't have the evidence to, like, I wasn't there when God created the universe. I wasn't outside of space-time.
Whether or not God created the universe is kind of like what we're talking about. Well, more like that he existed. Now you asserted that you know that God created the universe just as I know particles exist. Now I can demonstrate.
Well, I can agree that particles exist. You're saying particles existed outside of space-time,
outside of our
prior to the Big Bang.
That particles must exist prior to our local presentation of space-time. That's different than saying outside of space-time.
What makes you say that? What's the evidence for that?
So I think he's talking about the fields that just existed, not necessarily the particles. The particles are fluctuations in the field. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, wait a second. That's all part of space. That's all part of space. None of that exists without space.
So
right? I mean,
Well,
you get nothing. You get nothing to start with. You get nothing unless you speculate, which is fine. We can speculate.
I wouldn't even say that there's zero space. So you get to a point called the Planck length, right? And that's not zero volume. It's just really small, right? It's just really small. So it's not even saying that there's zero space. But after that point, we can't describe what's happening.
Right. So I mean, kind of like
I agree with that.
let's take like a ruler, for example, right? Like we have measurements on a ruler, and you might go down to like on like the side of the ruler that has the really tiny markings, and you get to the point where you have a centimeter. Well, that's not the smallest thing that exists. It's just the smallest thing that the ruler is good to measure. Right?
Right.
So our current mathematical equations aren't the smallest thing that exists necessarily. It's just the current smallest thing that we can measure using that math.
Yes. That's
sure.
That's exactly the point that I was getting ready to make. So it's basically
now
when we talk about
Planck, logic would dictate there must be a beginning to that. Nothing is infinite in this universe.
What
Nothing.
logical?
What law of logic would dictate that it would have?
Because in reality, there is no such thing as the infinite. It can't exist here. It never has been.
Prove that. Prove that the infinite can't exist.
I would just say you can't disprove what I just said.
Well, sure, I can't disprove that leprechauns exist. That doesn't mean that they do.
Oh, sure you can.
So no, you can't.
How could you disprove a leprechaun exists?
Be my guest. Go ahead. I'm ready.
It's illogical.
No. You can't just say it's illogical. I'm saying to you, leprechauns exist. Disprove it.
So, Scott.
Okay, so you want me to give evidence that they wouldn't exist? Okay, so I see.
No.
I want you to disprove it.
But he's not going to be able to do this. Can I just point out?
Of course, he's not. That's my whole point.
So
leprechauns never wrote.
Going to be able to.
Yeah. Sorry.
Leprechauns never wrote what? Go ahead.
Like
I was trying to save you, but go ahead.
No, I want to hear what you said.
I'm ready.
What I was going to say was you couldn't disprove that leprechauns exist because you can't investigate everywhere. So think the Andromeda Galaxy, right? It takes 2.5 million years for information to travel. How would you know that a leprechaun don't exist there? You have no ability to investigate.
Well, I mean, I'm honestly just going to have to go to. Yeah. Okay. Continue.
All right. So now, what we would say is we have no reason to believe that leprechauns exist. Now, you had made a statement, and you wanted us to accept it as true, based on the assumption that we couldn't disprove what you were saying.
Sure.
And my problem. This is a bad way to approach any sort of problem. When we're trying to find an answer, we don't accept something as true until it's disproven. Otherwise, you're going to have to accept everything until it's proven otherwise.
Is something out there.
Say that again.
Theory of evolution is something that's been thrown in there.
Well, I mean,
I don't know what you mean. But
they basically say believe it or disprove it. And math alone dictates you can disprove evolution.
I mean,
I
don't want to go in the evolution thing. So you kind of touched on it with the leprechauns. The fact is if you want to use evolutionary theory alone, that alone disproves evolution, or that alone disproves. Evolution.
You've saved him 12 times now. AAA, let him hang himself. I'm done with it.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Evolutionary theory is the best theory for the current diversity of life on this planet. That is it. That is all evolutionary theory is. It has nothing to do with whether leprechauns exist or not, or whether they could exist in another galaxy or other planets. It is the best. It is the best explanation for the origin of the diversity of life on this planet.
On Earth.
On this planet.
Sure.
So we've seen the diversity of life, and we have a theory that explains it as best as humanly possible. We call that theory evolution. That has nothing to do with the existence of leprechauns or the possibility of their existence of them in other planets, galaxies, or even potentially other universes.
What would have been on this distant planet the mechanism for the existence of
no clue, but you can't disprove that it doesn't exist.
No clue. What we're trying to do
a pixie could exist that can create magic that can fart out a leprechaun, and you can't disprove that it couldn't happen.
Who created it?
Doesn't matter. If it exists, it exists.
Or was it created?
It would it matter? If your God created a leprechaun, would it not still exist? Is your God incapable of creating leprechauns?
Well,
how do you know he didn't create a leprechaun somewhere else?
I mean, I guess if he wanted.
Okay, so what you're saying is there is a method in which some way a leprechaun can exist, and that method, in your opinion, is a god. Right?
I mean,
so what's to say there's not another method in which a leprechaun could exist? Like maybe a demigod that can create
I'm going to have to... I'm sorry, first off, I didn't catch either of your two names off the bat here. I don't know which one's Joshua.
I'm Facade. He's Triple.
Yeah, I go by Joshua. That's my real name. But yeah, on the show, it's Triple.
I'm Facade.
And sorry, what's your name?
Facade.
He's Facade. After you get to this point, I like us to get back to infinity. But
sure.
I mean, that's a whole separate
Facade, I gotta ask you to dial it down a little bit. I appreciate the intensity, but your mic is cutting out when you do that, so it's tough for me to follow.
Gotcha. You've given yourself enough rope to hang yourself upon, and you have a method in which you've admitted leprechauns could exist by proxy of your God being capable of creating leprechauns. What is to say there is no other method in which leprechauns could exist?
Okay, so let me ask you this. On Mars, there was a point in time where they figured they would find some form of life, yeah?
I mean, humans have speculated, but I don't know that.
I don't know why I wouldn't say that they figured.
Okay, let me say it this way then. People expect that it wouldn't be super surprising if they were to visit another planet that they would find some form of life.
That's kind of incorrect. Have you ever read about Drake's equation? No, okay. So if you're unfamiliar, there's kind of a paradox of equations that happen when you're talking about life on other planets. There's Drake's equation, which is a really, really complicated formula that estimates all the number of total planets and then all the number of planets that could potentially have some form of complex life, right? That's Drake's equation. That number is in the billions, right? But then there's this theory that goes kind of against that, and a lot of people refer to it as like the great filter, and it's called the Fermi paradox. If there's billions of extraterrestrial life that exist on billions of planets, why is it that we haven't seen them? And there's a couple reasons that we kind of suspect that to happen. One is distance, because the nearest galaxy to us would take several billion light years to travel to like the next inhabitable planet, traveling at the speed of light, which means that everybody on board would die several generations through, hundreds and thousands of generations through later. The other thing is time. Like, just because we exist now, we're looking back in cases to things like lights from stars. So because of things like redshift, we know that we're moving further away from these things. Not only that, but we know about how far they are away. So when we're looking back at planets, civilizations could have risen and completely been destroyed and literally be no evidence thereof, because we're looking at stuff that existed millions of years ago. So you have time and you have distance.
That's assuming that the speed of light is constant.
Well, I mean, we know it's not constant because we can.
When it goes through stuff, it changes speed.
Speed of light in a vacuum.
But
I'd say that the most recent James Webb images make it quite clear that light's doing something different. I mean, we're seeing spiral galaxies at the same time, I would say the same age as ours, billions of light years away. I think that's interesting.
We're seeing the light from them.
There's some misunderstandings here, but instead of that's going to take a lot of time to explain. I like to go back to the original argument.
I
So you were
still want you
saying-
to disprove leprechauns.
Well, we got there because he was said that the universe can't, like infinities can't exist in the universe. And I said, how do you know that? And he was like, well, you can't
There's
disprove
no
it.
evidence of it at all. No, there's no evidence of it.
How
infinity.
many numbers
but
are
Scott,
there?
Scott, do you understand that saying that there's no evidence of something doesn't mean you disproved it?
No, it's a logical fallacy. Okay, so have you heard of I think it's called Herbert's Hotel, or have you heard of the
Hilbert's Hotel?
Yeah, that's yeah. Okay. And so what do you think of that then? Rather than me describing the whole thing in some sloppy, clumsy way, you know of it. Explain.
You mean
how
like
that
everybody moves over
life,
into another room?
assuming that it's an infinite hotel.
that violates no law of logic. That doesn't mean that the universe had a beginning. It could just always existed. That's why I was asking you what logical absolute does it violate?
If it's always existed, then every moment that's ever happened will always happen, whether with the slightest modifications or not.
No, not the past moments. That they wouldn't happen again. There's no reason to think that.
Why not? Everything's infinite at that point.
Well, unless time is cyclical.
No, we're not saying each point of time is constantly happening. We're saying
no, I'm not saying
it's possible that the universe always existed. Why would you think that each point of time is always happening? That doesn't even follow.
I'm confused. Maybe I don't understand. What's the H point of time?
What's the age? What did you say?
You said what'd you say? The H point of time? What is it you said?
So
like
why would you think that each point of time is always happening?
Oh, I don't think that.
But you said that would be that would happen out of logical necessity if the universe always existed, right?
Oh, no. What I'm saying is that there'd have been a constant in this fluctuating universe idea that you're trying to.
I didn't say the universe is fluctuating.
Well, it would have to if you're saying that it started infinitely small and bursts out. It would then.
I didn't say it started infinitely small. No, so Scott.
Okay,
Scott,
so
what
was
we're saying is
there a point
13.8 billion years ago, right? Einstein's field equations stopped working, and from there, we're not able to describe what's happening. So we could just say we don't know. There's no reason. Anything that you say is beyond that is mere speculation, which is exactly what you're doing by saying there's some omnipotent being that's outside of space that's doing.
I mean, you're truly flying right in the face of modern day cosmology when you're saying that there isn't a beginning to the universe. I mean,
no
more.
Who says there's the beginning of the universe?
Say that again.
Who says there's a beginning of the universe?
Well, at this point, I guess when we're looking back at the Big Bang as a beginning of the universe, space.
No, that is when they can describe space time. After that, tell me.
When it doesn't exist,
you ever heard of super? It doesn't mean it didn't exist. We just can't describe what's happening. Well, what do you think superstring theory? What do you think they're trying to do?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you said try. They're definitely trying.
Yeah, what are they trying to do? What do you think? What's their goal?
Well, what is that? Is that I haven't looked heavily into string theory. Is it not multiple dimensions?
Well, that's a byproduct of super.
Oh my god. Okay, all right. So check this out. So right now, we're able to there's 4 fundamental laws of physics. We're able to quantize 3 of them, as in describe them in discrete segments. That's why you have the weak and strong interaction, electromagnetism, described as particles, right? Einstein's field equations won't allow us to do that. You get to a certain point where it starts describing space-time with infinites, right? We call that a singularity. Now, that doesn't make any sense. That means Einstein's field equations are insufficient here because infinity is not a number. It's a description of a set. So we need a more fundamental model to describe space-time, right? And so what they're trying to do is look at something smaller. They're saying perhaps the most fundamental part of reality are these vibrating strings, and perhaps the particles are made out of this, and so is space-time. And
I mean, again, this is all speculation, right? There's no evidence to this at all.
Well, yeah, it's all in the math.
It's all speculation. None of this has been proved.
Well, yeah, that hasn't strength.
I get what you're doing. I mean,
Scott, listen. You were saying that the academic consensus is that the universe began 13.8 billion years ago. What I'm trying to show you is that
I wouldn't say that, but I would say
that is not what you're saying. They don't think it began 13.8 billion years ago. And the evidence that I was showing you that they don't believe this what you're saying. It's more fundamental theories. One of those is superstring theory. Another one's M theory. Another one's loop quantum gravity. What they're trying to do is describe physics. You back?
Yeah, my bad. I hit the wrong button.
Yeah, so okay. So all I'm trying to do is
I don't
explain that.
Let me cut in real quick, and it's nothing to do with what you were just saying. It's just to address something that's going on in the chat. Wes, I really appreciate you commenting, and in general, I would say it typically may help grow the show. But I'm asking kindly, because I've asked in chat, I'm asking kindly on person where you can hear me, because you're probably not paying attention to what I'm reading because you're too busy typing. Get back to the discussion that we're having, the three of us, our guests and whatnot, or stop commenting. And that's as kind as I'm going to make it. I really don't want to ban you from chatting and commenting. I don't, because I've enjoyed the 2 times that we've had you on our show. But you're asking and commenting so often that people that may have questions for Scott or one of us, or may ask for clarification as something that we've said, is going unnoticed because you're commenting so long and frequently. And it's nothing to do with what Scott has said or what either of us hosts have said. It's your own thing. And you're more than welcome to do that on your own channel. You're more than welcome to come back on the show and we can talk about that with you. But
what's the scoop? What's he saying?
He's got a whole thing about
flooding your chat.
Yeah. He's a whole thing about prophecy, and he's got his own set of prophecy.
Can I say something? Yeah. I mean, Wes, if you're a fellow believer, man, we're trying to have a talk. We're just trying to talk. And let me ask you, do you really think that that's how Jesus went about on the shores of Galilee having conversations with people?
Yeah, so he's going to say you're not one of the chosen.
Let's have a conversation.
And he's not. I'm telling you, it's not going to be productive.
If you want to go one-on-one with Wes, we'll be glad to set that up with you.
Yeah, it's just not going to be productive right now.
Back on discussion though. So
yeah. So, all right. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. It's just that I want to address that real quick because other people have been asking questions, but I've missed them because Wes is just flooding it. So please, Wes, just calm down, and I won't ban you from chat. But that's what I'm working on when I accidentally click the wrong button. So just so you know, Wes.
Gotcha. So nobody think that the verse began at that point. That's something that Bill Craig just completely misunderstand. And it seems like you adopted his misunderstanding.
I mean, that's what I was taught in school too.
No, well, I don't think you were taught that in school. I think there is I'm not going to. I wasn't there with you in school. That is not the academic consensus. And if you look at these other more fundamental theories, they kind of demonstrate exactly what I was talking about. So
okay, well,
why do you think that the universe would have to have a big?
Right. Okay. So there's everything that exists has a cause. That is the truth.
No.
Everything that you're right. I worded that bad. Everything that's begun to exist has a cause.
I don't know if that's true.
I'd also.
Okay. Well, I mean, maybe this is where we don't know. Maybe this is where we move on to a different.
No. So you're making the assertion that everything that began to exist has to have a cause. I'm asking you, provide some evidence of that.
Everything.
What do you mean? So What do you mean?
The house around
How is
you.
that evidence?
The house around you, the internet, your body,
Those
your
things,
parents' body.
those things have a cost. That doesn't mean everything has a cost.
I didn't say
Like,
that. I said everything that begins to exist has a cause.
That doesn't mean that everything that began to exist has a cause. And
It
on
does.
top of that, I'm not even sure if the universe began to exist. So even if
that's
I were to
up for
accept,
debate, sure.
well, even if I would accept what you're saying, it wouldn't necessarily apply to the universe. But I'm still not convinced.
You're right about that. You're right. From your perspective, there's an out that you can consider thinking about. You're going to say string theory or those other ones. That's fine. There
Forget
isn't
string
evidence
theory.
for those.
Forget string theory, right? Forget them all.
Sure,
What I'm saying
sure.
right now, out all the available evidence to us that's to us right now, from what we can say is 13.8 billion years ago, our model of physics stopped working.
Okay, but
So anything
beyond
beyond that is speculation. When you say that the universe began to exist, you're speculating. Yeah. I'm saying I don't know.
Okay, you're right. I've picked a side. Now here's the thing though. If you're saying 13.8 billion years ago, we know that the universe is currently expanding. What happened?
That wasn't me this time. Yeah,
It's all good.
Me?
That button.
Go.
It wasn't me this time. I think I got kicked.
All right, go ahead. Oh, really?
Yeah, I think you kicked me. Stop pressing the button.
Okay, but go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, so
what were you saying?
So 13.8 billion years ago. Okay, right now we know that the universe is expanding. It's in a state of expansion, still expanding, and it's actually increasing to expand. Its speed of expansion continues to go up. So at one point, let's say give or take 13.8 billion years ago. I actually disagree with that, but I'll use it for the sake of argument. 13.8 billion years ago, it had shrunk. It was significantly smaller than it is now. So small that scientists say, that it was in the form of what we would consider a dot, super small, right?
Oh,
so
yeah,
all that matter, energy, boom. What's outside of that?
So what you're describing is space-time. There wouldn't be an outside.
Right. I agree with you. What would have started that expansion?
No idea.
Right. So, and that's true. I believe it was God.
Prove it.
What reasons do you have
What's
to
your
believe
evidence?
a God?
Yeah.
You use that same argument on me that I just used on you?
I was asking, why would you believe that? You just said, I believe it's God. I could say, I believe it was Elvis. I mean, sure, you could believe it. Do you have any evidence?
Okay. So maybe I'm being inconsiderate with my explanation.
Yeah. Plus, on top of that, you said there was nothing that's outside of it. So
right.
I don't even know how you could say it.
So if let's just say this, if there was something that existed outside of it, it certainly wouldn't be in the form of what you and I are right now. Life. It can't. It can't be.
I have no idea.
It can't.
No
be.
idea.
We couldn't exist outside of space, time, and matter.
How do you know that something like us couldn't exist outside of the Big Bang?
There's nothing there. What would you make us out of? There'd be no material. When would
I
we
have
be?
no idea. I have no idea.
Okay.
You are speculating here. I'm trying to figure out how you're getting there.
Cop-out. Well, I'd say it's a pretty big cop-out to say I don't know. Without let's run it.
But
right?
It's not a cop-out if I don't know. It's like if you were to ask me, tell me what's my birthday?
Okay, but
can I answer? I know.
Say that again.
No, not Facade. But what's my birthday, Scott?
Oh, I don't know. I'd say March 12th.
Is that a cop-out? You don't know. Is that a cop-out?
No.
Of course it's not. It's just the truth. You don't know.
And by the way, if you speculated every day of the year, would that be any more close to the reality?
Say that again.
If you speculated every single day of the year, would you ever get any more close to the reality? Like you could go through every single day.
If I worked backwards in time, I could watch him turn into a baby and I could find out the day that he was born.
There's a limited number of possibilities in which he could be born, right? You know what you can't do that with? A speculation of a being that exists maybe outside of space and time. because
Right.
there's no subset in which you could include.
Well,
There's no
let me explain
parameters
this
in
to you.
which you
Okay,
have
so
them.
the reason I want to say, yeah, okay, that's well. First off, God. Okay, so like we've attached an idea presupposition as to what God is in our minds. So when I say God, from your perspective, I see it's going to be a vague, oh, he's just God of the gaps kind of guy. So God has to be, if he is the one that created the universe, then he has to be all powerful. He has to exist outside space.
Why would he have to be all powerful to create the universe? Why can't he just be sufficiently powerful enough to create the universe?
Sure, let's say that. Let's say
Well,
that.
well, that's the only thing you could logically conclude. Hey,
That's fair.
I can deadlift 600 pounds. Why would you think that I could deadlift infinity? Why would you think that I'm all powerful just because I could deadlift a lot? The only thing you could conclude is that I am strong enough to deadlift 600 pounds. There's no reason to think
Right.
that I'm all powerful. So
Okay, so you're saying
God
God hasn't necessarily shown you enough power that he's worth
hasn't
being
shown me
called infinitely powerful.
neither God nor you has shown me that a God exists. What I'm attacking is you're saying that whatever created the universe had to be omnipotent, and that does not logically follow. Whatever,
Well, I mean,
if the universe was created, it had to be created by something that is sufficiently powerful enough to create the universe.
Sure.
It does not entail that it has to be all powerful.
Okay, that's fair.
Perhaps it can create one universe, but not two.
Oh, well, how could you say that? That's speculation.
I don't know. What I'm saying, perhaps there's no reason to think.
So
there's no reason to think that it's all powerful just because of creating the universe.
I would say, I mean, when you consider the vastness of the expanse of the universe that we live in, the power it would take to create something like that, not to mention have wound it back and let it play out in accordance to his will, allowing free will to be involved.
Why think it's infinitely powerful? Why think that is infinitely powerful? There's no logical entailment.
Okay, so the Bible says that. That's why I believe that.
Okay, well,
Now,
why believe that?
I only want to leave you hanging for a second on that. So the reason I go to the Bible, to the Word of God, is because here's the thing, and this was a big thing for me. Was okay, if God exists, how has He shown us that He's existed? You'd imagine the Creator of the universe, and I do believe that He's created life only on this planet. If we're that important to Him, if this is that important to Him, and the play out of Jesus on the cross is as important as the Bible claims it is to Him, if that's all the case, then how would He have explained His plans for us throughout time? There's only one way that He could have, if He did, and that is currently the Word of God. That's the Bible as we see it right now, and also His words preserved through His people, the Jewish people, using at the time scrolls kept safe in temples, copied by scribes.
Can I stop you here? So because it
is important that
but it's problematic because you're jumping to the Bible with the assumption that God wrote it, but I'm not convinced that God exists.
Well,
so in order to go there, we have to first establish that He exists.
So
non-existent things can't write Bibles. So can we at first? How could something that doesn't exist write something?
Well, again, you're assuming it doesn't exist, that God doesn't exist.
I'm not assuming that. What I'm saying is you have not convinced me that a God exists.
Oh,
but we're jumping to the Bible and you're using this argument with the assumption that
Joshua,
God
I got to stop you for a second. I can't convince you that God exists. Oh,
you have not presented it. You have not. Okay, let me rephrase it. Not only have you not convinced me, you have not presented any evidence or argument without a buttload of fallacies in it to demonstrate a God. Like all I've heard was gaps and bald ass assertions. That's all I've heard so far. You said He made the universe, therefore He's all powerful.
Cutting out really bad there.
No logical entailment.
He's stealing.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, you said God created the universe, therefore He's all powerful. There's no logical entailment. The only thing you can logically conclude from creating the universe is that you're sufficiently powerful enough to create the universe. But you're saying He can do everything. It's like saying because I can deadlift a lot,
Wow,
I can deadlift anything.
Let's not play with these minuscule little things. Okay, so
let's say I could deadlift the
is.
universe, Scott. Let's say
let
I could deadlift the universe.
I gotta ask you this question. A being, let's say, I'm not saying you're giving me this, but let's say you give me that this being created the universe. Okay. You say, okay, well, Mr. Being that created the universe, I don't think you're actually omnipotent. Okay. From where you're sitting, how do you even have the right to say that to this being?
I don't think. Why do I need a right? What we're talking about is epistemology, not
no. We're talking about the
authority,
scope of power that you have, that you can witness on a ground level.
Let me ask you something.
To that,
let me ask you something.
That made all time matter energy.
Let's put this in a good perspective for you.
You're an ant,
Scott. That's fine. That's exactly where I'm going to go. Let me go there with it. As an ant, if I am capable of describing something as powerful, right?
Sure.
Would it be truthful as an ant to describe humans as omnipotent?
No.
Why not? From our perspective, they're so strong. They can do so much. They could destroy our entire world, our entire civilization with their thumb, and not even be aware that they did it. But you're saying it'd be untrue to describe them that way. Why would that be?
Ants could witness humans die in this world.
A god could witness everybody in the universe dying. That wouldn't make them omnipotent.
I think you just jumped for a second. So
no, I didn't. I'm saying just because something is sufficiently powerful to wipe out the entire universe or to eradicate all of humans' existence doesn't mean it's omnipotent. Just like I could kill every ant within a 100-mile radius of here without breaking a sweat.
No, you back up for a second. You mentioned that the ant seeing you as Mr. Powerful is going to potentially assume that you are the most powerful. But how can you be if you can die?
The ants doesn't if I kill them, they don't know that I can die.
Well, but we as
and if I kill them all, they couldn't have that discussion. By the way,
say that again.
Like if I killed all the ants, they'd never be able to determine that because there'd be no ants to find that out.
Yeah. Okay.
So what's the difference in that and your God?
But I mean, if we're gonna play in these funny little zones, ants don't think at all.
So
I'm not asking. I'm asking would it be truthful?
I should say they don't think. They don't know.
If I were an ant, would it be truthful to describe humans as omnipotent? The answer to that question is a truthful no. Just like when AAA asked you, even if the scope is a human and the scale is the universe, to describe something that they're unaware is omnipotent.
This isn't fair. No, it's not a fair comparison because one is outside of time and space and reality. The other, and you're comparing humans.
You'd have to demonstrate that exists.
We're made of the same thing.
This analogy is functionally equivalent to what you were just saying.
We're made of the same thing, right? God cannot be made of the same thing.
Saying ants are unaware of this, buddy. Like they're incapable of understanding such a thing.
No. Yeah, listen for a second. So it's what your analogy would work in a way of saying is like, okay, so like the idea of like the Thors and the Zeuses and the these Odins, that would be more an acceptable comparison. Those are gods that are all powerful that exist in reality, in this. Right?
Yours doesn't exist in reality. But go ahead.
Right, he exists. I agree with you. He exists outside of reality. That's exactly it. And for the box,
what you're saying, so
created.
But by defining something that
by saying something exists outside of reality, you're saying it doesn't exist. Because reality is
wait a second. You said yourself earlier, who's to know what outside the box is made of?
Well, that's the universe. That's not reality.
We're talking about we said outside of space-time, not outside of reality. No,
that's outside reality. Reality is
it's not. No, you're wrong. Outside
nothing
of space-time,
exists outside of.
I can prove it.
All we have
space-time is so. Scott, so this is where you're wrong again. So you're jumping into physics that you don't understand. When they talk about local presentation of space-time, they're talking about space-time, period, not reality. This is why they contemplate like multiverses. That would be outside of space-time. They think the singularity in black holes
doesn't exist. You can't prove that exists. That's outside of our reality.
Whoa, now we care about whether I can prove something exists. You can't disprove
Well,
it.
you can't throw in multiverse and make it sound like it's science.
I'm not saying the multiverse exists. What I'm saying is I'm trying to distinguish space-time from reality. Well, when I said it's something is speculation to talk about something outside of space-time, it's not saying that it's outside of reality. Those are very different things. That's not what I'm talking about.
I disagree. I have to disagree entirely. Those are the same things.
You're just wrong, because like that's not what physicists are talking about.
I can prove it. I can prove it.
If
I got you.
Any
I can do
academic
that.
paper on this topic.
I can do that with a very simple analogy. You may not have ever read it, depending on how strict your parents were and your enjoyment of reading. Do you know who Harry Potter is?
Yeah, sure.
Does Harry Potter exist in reality?
No. Well,
Does
a
Harry
person named Harry Potter may.
Well, but I'm talking about the Harry Potter, the wizard. Does he exist in reality?
The one from the book series or the one from the cinematic universe?
Either or, it doesn't matter. Pick one. You can have either.
Well, okay.
Or.
I mean, if you're gonna, yeah, he can exist in reality if you're saying that he exists in our minds, which do exist in reality.
So, if I think of a unicorn, that exists.
But if you're saying, does the Harry Potter world, is he part of this world?
Well, I'm asking, does he exist in reality?
Does Harry Potter himself exist in reality?
Yeah.
The one played by Daniel Radcliffe?
Well, on the cinematic screen, that was an actor portraying him, but I'm asking, does Harry Potter himself exist in reality? I'm not asking, does the movie
No, he's a figment of your imagination while reading the books.
Okay, and did you read those books within space-time?
No, I didn't read the books.
Well, I mean, are you aware that like space-time exists, and in order for those books to exist, they'd have to exist within space-time?
Absolutely.
So something that exists in space-time
now, that being
and
said,
something that exists in reality don't coincide.
Sorry, say that again. I cut you off.
So something that exists in space-time and something that exists in reality don't necessarily coincide. Just like I can think about a unicorn, but that doesn't make it reality. Sure. And when I'm thinking about that unicorn, I'm existing
in reality.
So
I'm existing in space-time, right? And I have this thought in space-time, but that doesn't make my thoughts a reality.
Space-time?
Well, would you say that you're currently alive?
I'm alive. My body's functioning.
You exist within space-time.
But the number 3 exists in my mind. Is the number 3 real?
No, it's a concept.
So, all right. So, but before we go down this rabbit hole, like, I don't want to like spend too much time on this. Just look at the academic journals. Like when they talk about space-time, they're not talking about reality. Those are separate things.
I have to fundamentally disagree with you. Nothing exists without space-time. No, sorry. Okay, you're right. Maybe I'm using the wrong word. Nothing exists outside of time, space, and matter.
Scott, you don't even agree with that. Scott, you believe that God, who existed outside of space-time, created the universe. But your God is real, which means that he's part of reality. You don't even agree with what you're saying.
No, you're right. I should rephrase. You're right. That was a sloppy way to explain it. So, nothing material or bound by time can exist. Okay, how am I? Let me try to word this properly. Things bound by space and time and matter can't exist outside of space, time, and matter. I'm not saying space time.
Well,
I'm saying
sure, yeah.
God is called spirit. All right, and there's a reason that he's called that in the Bible. It's not claiming that he is made of the same things we are. He's not made of elements. He's not a corporeal being. Why do
you believe that?
Okay, good question.
Prove any evidence of that?
Yeah, good question. So in the Bible, there are massive amount of prophecies, especially involving Jesus Christ. But there's way more than that.
My favorite one's in Ezekiel.
For instance, the ones with
I'm going to grant you the prophecies.
Okay, so the author of the book then seems to know things before they happen and allows them to play out exactly the way he authored it.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, there seems to be a being that influenced the writing of scripture over thousands of years that prophesied of one to come.
How would you know
And-
that being is God? And how would you know that he's omniscient?
I'd also really like to
do it
push
this
you
way.
on that and just say, like, how do you say?
Just 1 second. We've put a label onto this being that you said. How would you know this being's outside?
I mean, how would you know that he's God? So let's say I'm gonna grant.
Okay, so,
I disagree with the prophecies thing, but I'm gonna grant to you
what God
prophecy.
What God is okay. So God is this. What we perceive him to be. We have slapped labels on God. So if
God
you want to
is
say,
what we perceive him to be.
yeah, sure, absolutely, and that can depend
I
on.
perceive
I perceive
God
him to be a
as a
figment of
sinner.
my imagination.
Right. And a lot of people have a different view of God. So when we say God, when I say God, it may be a different understanding of God than you or anybody else. There's a lot of people that believe, like for instance, the Vikings. Those guys believe that God lived inside of reality. Okay, that he actually had flesh and bones. Okay, so God. Now we're not going to get into the Trinity right now, but
I'm gonna do this for you. All right.
I believe in God from the Bible.
I'm gonna
Which is
give you.
described as spirit.
I'm
Sorry.
gonna give you prophecy. I'm gonna give you resurrection. I'm gonna say Jesus was clinically dead for 3 days and came back to life. Now I want a logical entailment for God. Show me how there's a resurrection. Show me how that logically entails there's a God.
How that logically entails there's God. So you'd have to look at what Jesus said.
Okay.
Okay. So you look at what Jesus said. Will you grant me everything Jesus said is true?
Well, no, because Jesus said he's God. I'll just give you the argument, man. But I'm granting you the resurrection.
Right. Okay.
I'm gonna accept it without evidence or argument.
Well, there's evidence, but Jesus raised from the dead. Okay. Could Jesus have raised himself from the dead?
Who's to say?
I don't know.
Of course not. He was dead. Of course not. He was dead.
Okay. No. I don't know
Let's be real here. Let's be real here. Can you, or do you know of any absolute way, especially 2,000 years ago, that a person who is dead can bring their dead body back to life?
Scott, I don't know of any way that a dead thing could come back to life. I don't know of any way that could happen.
I agree with you. That's pretty miraculous.
I don't know if it's miraculous. I just don't know the way that. I just don't know the way that it could happen. So, but you're saying,
well, of course we don't. Well, of course we don't, or we'd all be getting resurrected all the time if we knew how to do that. So
I'm not saying I don't know how to. I'm not just saying that I don't know how to do it. I'm just saying I don't know of any cause for that. You're asserting that it's a God. Show me how it logically entails that.
There's no other answer.
How do you know that? What do you mean? I could think of other.
Give me one.
So, all right. So, you say that God exists, right?
Yes.
So, it's possible for something that's a little bit less powerful than a God for it to exist.
Oh, sure. Angels exist, yeah.
Of course. Okay. So, what if this thing that is slightly less powerful than God is capable of raising people from the dead? No God is just a non-God that raises people from the dead. How do you know that?
Okay, so to bring life from non-life. That's what you're saying. Is that I'm inserting that only God can do that. Well, and that's true. I am.
What I'm saying is I'm granting you the resurrection, and you're saying you know that God did it. I'm asking, how do you know that?
So Jesus claimed to be the life, and he said before he died that he would come back to life. In fact, the woman followers knew that.
So if I say
that's why they were waiting for him at the tomb.
So Scott, so if I say that when I die, I'm going to come back to life, and then I die and come back to life, you're going to conclude that I'm God?
No, because God's not going to raise you back to life.
But if I did, I'm saying in the scenario, I came in the scenario, I said when I die, I'm going to come back to life, and then I come back to life. Yeah. Now you're going to believe that I'm God.
It would be tough not to, wouldn't it?
Not if you understand epistemology.
If you claimed to be God, listen. If you claimed to be God, and everything you said hinged on that, like if that of your assertion that you are God, then to prove it allowed your enemies to kill you, and then you come back to life 3 days later. So I don't believe Jesus raised.
That wouldn't prove it. And here's the thing: you're doing the same error when we were talking about the cause of the universe. You're saying because it created the universe, it has to be God and omnipotent. Now you're doing it with something even much more minuscule. You're saying because it raised a single person from the dead, it has to be capable of anything. Well, how do you know that? You're doing the same. You're doing the same. The same.
He wrote it down. He wrote it down in the Bible. Man, he told us. There is nothing else that exists in this world like the Bible. Nothing.
Have you ever read the Quran?
Nothing exists. There's nothing in this world that exists that's like me.
Have you ever read the Quran?
That's not true. You're just made up of bits of DNA information.
Have you ever read the Talmud?
But it's not me.
Have you read the Pentateuch or the Talmud or the Quran or basically any other?
The first two things you just said are Jewish. What was the first one? The Talmud is the Old Testament. I've read that.
The Quran. I'm asking, have you heard of them?
Sure.
Yeah. Would you say they're unlike the Bible and that they're texts that proclaim like?
Well, I mean the not the first one. What was the one? Talmud. I mean that is the Bible, but the other two.
How about the Quran?
They're not at all.
Why is it unlike the Bible? It makes a claim. It makes prophecies. It has prophecies
easily falsifiable. There's massive contradictions throughout them. The prophecies that didn't come true.
I mean, that's all in the Bible.
Sounds a lot like the Bible to me.
Yeah, because you haven't read the Bible.
Well,
Don't tell me you have.
All right. Okay, sure. Let's talk about some false prophecy here. Cool. So Ezekiel, have you read Ezekiel chapter 26?
I have read the whole Bible, but I don't know it verbatim.
Okay, so it talks about it's this prophecy. It's about Nebuchadnezzar, right? King of Tyre, right? He goes to Tyre, and God says, like, thus saith the Lord, I'm going to send Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. He's going to utterly destroy the city. It's going to be good for nothing but drying fishing nets, right? Totally destroyed. We know historically that didn't happen. It's a total failed prophecy. Nebuchadnezzar went there. He was never able to conquer the city. It's a false prophecy.
Well, I mean, I know you're setting it up wrong. So let's actually open up the Bible. Ezekiel what?
26. That's what it says.
Ezekiel
I didn't set it up
26.
wrong. God says
I know exactly what you're doing here. Let's go to Ezekiel.
What's the
Ezekiel
setup?
26 starting. I mean, you can start in verse 1 if you really want, but verse 3 starts.
Okay, so you do know how Tyre has been destroyed, right? Like Alexander the Great's the one that came in and destroyed it. It was destroyed.
It said
It was promised it would be
Nebuchadnezzar.
destroyed.
Says Nebuchadnezzar by name. So did the Bible just get that part wrong?
Alexander the Great came in and enslaved his inhabitants.
Wait, okay, I don't actually need to
but
open
it
the Bible
says
for this one.
Nebuchadnezzar's going to do it.
I'd also like to point out that
Nebuchadnezzar
it's currently
did
still a
destroy
city.
Tyre. Now he also didn't fully destroy Tyre. They went out to their island city.
He laid a 10-year siege on the city, was never able to conquer it.
He did conquer. He just couldn't get out. They were okay. So he went out. They went out to their island. Yeah.
Yeah, he couldn't get through the walls.
Are you saying Nebuchadnezzar didn't take the city in any way, shape, or form?
What I'm saying is the scripture says that he was going to utterly destroy it, and he did not.
That God was going to utterly destroy it.
It said God was going to send Nebuchadnezzar to utterly destroy it. Nebuchadnezzar did not do that.
Let's okay. I mean, if
you by your own admission said he didn't do it because you said Alexander the Great did it. Alexander the Great didn't do it either.
God said he would destroy Tyre and
through Nebuchadnezzar. It says Nebuchadnezzar,
and he did. Now, when it came to destroying it so utterly that it wouldn't even be used for that, they would use it to dry their fish nets on. That actually did happen.
No, it didn't.
It did not.
Tyre is
when
still
Alexander the Great conquered Tyre.
Tyre is still a city to this day, buddy. It is a really well-known tourist attraction.
And why do you keep bringing up Alexander the Great? It's Nebuchadnezzar. It says Nebuchadnezzar. So
look, God does work in multiple ways, right?
Which wouldn't have happened until the Greeks.
If I prophesy that Biden is going to win the election in 2024, and then when it comes around, Trump wins, and I say, well, I was still right because Trump won. Somebody won. Therefore, my prophecy's true. This is what you're doing. God
say that
says
again. Sorry.
Nebuchadnezzar is going to destroy the city, and now you're saying, well, somebody else did it. Therefore, the prophecy is true.
Yeah.
This
Well,
is
let's
false.
before we even continue with this, and because like I said, I don't know the Bible verbatim, so I would like to know where it says
Sure.
that God said
Ezekiel 26 verse 7.
26:7.
For this is what the sovereign Lord says: from the north, I am going to bring against Tyre Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, king of kings, with horses and chariots, with
I'd
horsemen
like to
and a
read with
great
you for a
army.
second. Can you
26 verse 7.
26 verse 7? Okay.
Yeah, this is the NIV version. For this is what the sovereign Lord says: from the north, I'm going to bring against Tyre Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, king of kings, with horses and chariots, with horsemen and great army. He will ravage your settlements on the mainland with the sword. He will set up siege works against you, build a ramp up to your walls, and raise his shields against you. He will direct the blows of his battering rams against your walls and demolish your towers with his weapons. That didn't happen. That's a lie.
That never happened.
No, it did not happen.
No, it didn't happen.
It did not.
I have to disagree with you on that.
Oh, really? You disagree?
Well, let's take a look.
I mean,
Okay.
history says it didn't happen.
Well, history is written by the men that end up writing the books.
You mean
Okay,
like
so
Ezekiel?
the historians here. Let's take a look. Let's just take a look. Oh, I almost just exited the stream.
It's okay. I've done it once before on this stream.
Okay, let's just do it through my phone here. And this is Tyre, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tyre, whatever you want to call it. It exists today.
Yeah, it did happen. So
this, I mean, but this
Let's-
sounds
let's-
like he was
let's
just
go
going
with
to
the-
attack them, right? And he did attack
no,
them.
it said he did it. It said he was going to demolish. He was going to destroy the city, lay it waste. It will be good for doing nothing but drying fishing nets. So you're saying that our
No,
account of
no.
history is wrong?
He says Nebuchadnezzar, and he lists a bunch of things that he will do,
Mhm.
including killing a bunch of these people. Then it says, okay, so they will plunder. They did. And they did, by the way. The people retreated to the Ocean City. Okay, so
It
did.
is Ocean
It wasn't
City.
destroyed.
Ocean City's Tyre.
Yeah.
Sure.
Tyre is
Yeah,
the
Tyre
city
is the Ocean City.
was on the island with the walls.
It nowhere here does it say that Nebuchadnezzar will utterly destroy Tyre. Okay, listen.
He
You
said,
gotta look at.
"I will make
listen, you
you
gotta look at
a
26.
bare rock,
Listen,
and you will
Look at
Listen,
look at 20. No, you're
gonna
not reading
read
it.
the passage to you.
26:13. Okay, you're not reading it.
Mhm.
After it says what Nebuchadnezzar will do, it says, I will put an end to the sound of your songs, and to the sound of your harps shall be heard no more. I will make you like a top of a rock, and you shall be a place for spreading nets, and you will never be rebuilt. Cry the Lord have spoken.
Yes,
Right.
my version says a bare rock. You will become a place to
Sure.
spread fishing nets. That means
Sure,
the
sure.
city's laid waste.
Ah, okay, so here's your mistake. And this is exactly what I figured. Okay, so he promises what Nebuchadnezzar will do, and then he promises what he will do. What God does not have to be done at the same time. He
And
did inevitably destroy Tyre.
No, he didn't.
Yeah,
In
he
either case, Nebuchadnezzar didn't destroy Tyre, and God didn't
No,
destroy
he didn't.
Tyre.
God
So,
did.
When and
oh, God
where?
did. So here's the thing that's here's the
Literally,
problem.
yeah, no.
So here's
Alexander
the
the Great
problem.
literally destroyed and leveled that city and took all of its inhabitants into
No,
slavery. What are you talking about?
No, he didn't.
He did not. But here's
He
the
did.
So okay, sure, Scott. Here's the thing. Scott. So are you trying to say that Ezekiel 26 wasn't really about Nebuchadnezzar? It was just
Part
about
of it, yeah, you're right. It's a partial prophecy. Yeah, that's right.
So it's about Alexander the Great. So here's the thing, Ezekiel.
No, not just. It is about Nebuchadnezzar. It is also about a promise God made towards that city about its destruction.
So you know
Gotcha.
what's odd is that Ezekiel and God himself seem to be under the impression that prophecy didn't happen. Because if you go in chapter 29,
that's true. There's a lot of people that have thought that God did not hold his promises.
no. The Bible, the
Bible.
Bible itself. Let's go to verse.
So
let's go to chapter.
Yeah, so there.
Scott, listen.
so
I'm
there-
trying to read.
There have been
Hold on,
times.
hold
Let
on,
me read
hold-
the
hold
Bible.
on.
Let me read this. Just chapter 29, verse 17. In the 27th year, in the first month of the first day, the word of the Lord came to me, son of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, drove his army in hard pain against Tyre. Every head was rubbed bare and every shoulder was made raw. Yet he and his army got no reward from the campaign he led against Tyre.
Where's this story?
This is chapter 29, verse 17.
Okay, one second.
So it's not just me and Facade that's disagreeing with you. God is disagreeing with you as well.
29. Yo, let's figure it out, right? 29, 17.
I mean, I've already figured it out. But go ahead.
The Bible's a very complex thing, and it does take study to read it. Just so let's get into it, right?
I agree, but it's not complex here. Here is very specific. It came to pass in the 26th
year that the first month, the first day, that the word of the Lord came to me, saying, "Son of man, Nebuchadnezzar." Okay, so who's being talked to right now? This is Ezekiel himself,
prophet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
the guy writing the book.
Yeah, God. He said the Lord.
So
came
he's
to me.
saying that. Yeah, so he's saying he labored tirelessly against Tyre.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yet was granted no reward.
And got no reward. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord said.
Where does it say no reward? I want to.
Verse 18.
And then what gets funnier is that
so they didn't receive wages from Tyre. Okay, so it doesn't say they didn't get anything.
It says he had no wages nor his army for Tyrus. If you're using the King James version.
So do you realize how conquering works, right? So you conquer a place and you take over its base for taxation.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what you do when you conquer a place. When they're playing taxes,
if the conquering works, if they have stuff.
If the conquering works, it didn't work.
Yeah, like it was predicted in chapter 26 that Nebuchadnezzar was going to do that. And then in 29 it says, "Oh, Nebuchadnezzar didn't actually do that." My bad.
This is where you're wrong.
Here's what
Nebuchadnezzar would do that. It promised God would do that.
No, it didn't.
In the first,
go read 26 verse 17 again.
It's God says he's sending Nebuchadnezzar to do it, and then Nebuchadnezzar doesn't do it. By the passage's own admission. He didn't start anything. It didn't happen.
So it says.
And then you said because Alexander the Great came 400 years later and does something else, not even quite what's described in Ezekiel 26, that somehow the prophecy's being fulfilled. This is what I'm talking about. This is like if I had said that Biden's going to win re-election, and then 2024 comes and Trump wins, and I say, "Oh, my prophecy was right," because although Biden didn't win, somebody won the election.
Wouldn't your prophecy be right, though, if 4 years later Biden did win a second term?
If I said it was in 2020,
2024.
or if it happened at all.
Yeah.
Well, there's no dates listed in the Bible as to when God said he would do it.
Okay, so we know the time span has to be within Nebuchadnezzar's lifespan.
Why? He said I would do it. He didn't say Nebuchadnezzar will.
He said Nebuchadnezzar's going to do it.
He didn't. He didn't say that. He said Nebuchadnezzar will do these things.
Where are you getting that God did it and not Nebuchadnezzar?
Can you please? What version 13, are you using?
26:13.
What version are you using?
I won't even tell you because then it becomes a thing about.
No, it's a KJV. It's fine. I don't care. I'm just asking. Chapter 26, verse 7. Please, can you read what yours says?
Yeah, for thus says the Lord, behold, I will bring against you Tyre from the north, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, king of kings, with horses and chariots. And with the horsemen, with an army, with many people, he will slay with the sword, and your daughters and your daughter villages in the fields. He will heap up a siege mound against you, build a wall against you, and raise a defense against you. He will direct his battering rams against your wall. With his axes, he will break down your towers. Because of the abundance of his horses, their dust will cover you. Your walls will shake at the noise of the horsemen.
Great. Now go to 29. Go to 29 and read verse 18 for me.
What are we wrong about?
Stop.
Nebuchadnezzar.
Triple A.
Okay,
stop.
So there. Okay.
Go to chapter 29.
Yeah.
Go to chapter.
Do you not know?
Can
how
you go
Tyre
to chapter
was set up?
29? Can you please go to chapter 29 and read verse 18 for me in your verse? In your verse.
I haven't finished yet.
You didn't finish reading?
Do you not know?
Can you finish reading?
Do you want me to finish reading, or do you want me to carry on to the next one?
I want you to either finish reading the chapter and verses that you were reading or continue on to verse 18 in chapter 29. I don't care what you do.
You're not going to cut me off this time?
I didn't cut you off.
Oh, okay. Really? You want to backtrack that? Because you literally cut me off.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah,
So
I have the
let's start with
video.
the
I
meta
can
discussion
do
here.
that
So,
for you.
but he had asked how Tyre was
I
laid
did
out.
say I was going to have a conversation. It does assume it will be a polite one. All right?
I've been
So
nothing but
back
polite.
the anger off a little bit.
I asked her to read your chapter and verse because you didn't tell me what version you were using, and then I asked you to read chapter 29, verse 18, because you still refused to tell me what version you're using. So since you won't tell me, I'm giving you the
reading
opportunity
the new King James version.
Okay, so would you like me to read it for the people that are watching, or will you read it for them? That way, there's no misconception.
Cut me off, bud.
I didn't cut you off at all. I didn't say anything. I asked you.
All right, if you're gonna lie now, I'm gonna.
Let's start with the meta discussion. So, all right. So, Scott, I think you're saying in chapter 26, verse 13, it says, "I will put an end to your noisy songs and music." Right, yes. And that's what God is going to do. Okay.
Well, at the time, of course, anybody reading that would have definitely thought, "Oh, he's promising Nebuchadnezzar's going to do it."
Sure. You saying that's promising Nebuchadnezzar's going to do that?
No, I'm saying that at the time, anyone reading that would definitely have assumed that, oh, God is going to get Nebuchadnezzar to do it.
Okay, so it says up here, it says, his horses will be so many they will cover you with dust. Your walls will be trembled, and horses and wagons and chariots. He will enter your gates as men enter cities whose walls have been broken. Right? So that's Nebuchadnezzar, right?
Yeah.
That did not happen.
So Nebuchadnezzar did not.
Go ahead.
You're saying that he did not conquer the land-based portion of Tyre.
The city.
There were two, right? There's two parts of Tyre. There's the part out in the sea.
The part out in the sea is the parts with the walls.
No, the reason those walls don't exist is because they were trampled over. They have been torn down. That city was destroyed.
Not by Nebuchadnezzar.
No, it wasn't. But it was taken by him.
He didn't destroy. So you talk about Alexander. What do you mean it was taken by him? So Nebuchadnezzar
he conquered that city.
No, he did not.
He didn't utterly conquer it the way that God promised the first time.
So who's wrong here? Is it you or the Bible? Is 29 wrong or 26 wrong? They do not agree.
Right. So they do in the fullness of time.
26 says he conquered the city. 29 says he did not. Then Nebuchadnezzar dies. So tell me what is going on here?
So okay, I'll explain it. There are two portions of this city. There's the land-based, and then there's out in the ocean. Okay, so what Tyre did is when times of siege would happen, they would retreat to their ocean area. Okay, and most of the people and their stuff would be made out.
That wasn't Tyre. No, it's not.
That is.
You go look at a map of ancient Tyre. There's Tyre is entirely an island. There was land adjacent to that they patrolled. So that was not.
It was their land. It was,
but it's not Tyre. Just like we have land in Cuba called Guantanamo Bay.
Let me explain something that may help a lot of people.
That's true.
Because I've done a lot of research and history on Alexander. In fact, my real name, which I have chosen, is because of Alexander the Great. Okay, Alexander the Great, who did conquer Tyre or Tyre, whatever you want to call it. Do you know? And he didn't even destroy it to the point that Ezekiel 26 says, but he did conquer Tyre in his conquering of the earth, right?
So I mean, he took everyone into slavery. So
he didn't take everyone into slavery. He took prisoners of war. He wasn't quite that barbaric, but nonetheless, do you know the method in which Alexander the Great used to conquer Tyre?
No, not entirely.
Oh, okay, cool.
But if I'm not mistaken, he built a rock bridge out to the island.
He built sand bridge to the island,
right?
Because it was an island. As a matter of fact, he looked historically against people that had tried to siege Tyre, and people that had used boats and bows and arrows and rams and spears, and recognized that given that it's an island, it was darn near an impossible task to be taken over without being foot soldiers on the ground. So what he had his men do is build a sand bridge out to Tyre to their walls so he could have people completely surround it and destroy it. Yep. That is how he conquered Tyre. Before Alexander the Great conquered Tyre, there was no land bridge. Tyre
I do
was
need
an
you to
island.
know that through that conquering that you just described, which I completely agree with, that is the fulfillment of that prophecy.
Okay, then
After
why?
verse
Okay,
13.
okay. Why in chapter 29 does he write?
I'm just an idiot. Just forgive me. I'm a complete moron. So I don't understand how things work sometimes. In Ezekiel, I'm confused because in Ezekiel 26, we get in verse 7, it says, I'm going to bring Nebuchadnezzar to do a bunch of things. Okay? And now I'm fully accepted that later in the chapter, God is going to do different things to Nebuchadnezzar. But we do get a list of things that Nebuchadnezzar is going to do.
Yeah.
Okay? So we say in chapter 26, there's some things that Nebuchadnezzar is going to do. And it seems to me that Nebuchadnezzar never did them. And then
What did he not do there? Did he not slay residents of Tyre with the sword?
No, he didn't.
No, not the residents of Tyre. No, because he could never enter the city.
He didn't slay them out in the streets.
Oh, okay. Wait a second. You need to understand. I mean, you can't just say that every resident of Tyre made it into their ocean dwelling. There was a land-based tier. It's essentially one big city that operate one from the land and one from
that
the
only
ocean.
Existed after
it's not
400.
Just an island city.
That only existed after 400 because of Alexander the Great. You're aware before that, historically, Tyre was solely an island.
No,
this is historically documented. This is historically documented. As a matter of fact, if you read it all about Alexander the Great, it's expanded upon the fact, and like they delve into the fact that he actually made a land bridge
about the residents
making it no longer an island.
So Scott, we should Google the words "Who built the land bridge to Tyre?"
Yeah,
Google it.
It's just going to say Alexander the Great.
It's going to say Alexander the Great did it.
Yeah.
So this was about 400 years after Nebuchadnezzar. So.
Yes.
All right, so if it wasn't built until 400 years later...
I don't know if you guys are fully grasping what I'm saying for a second. So it
sounds like residents... Can you correct me if I'm wrong here? I just want to make sure that I'm getting what you're saying, because again, I'm an idiot. I don't know stuff. But it sounds to me like you're saying there's a city that exists in kind of two components. A part that's on a peninsula and a part that's on an island. And Nebuchadnezzar conquered the part that was on the peninsula, but didn't conquer the part that was on the island. Is that what you're saying? Great.
Yes.
The part that's on the peninsula didn't exist before Alexander the Great because the land bridge didn't exist.
Okay, so let's logically go through that. How did they trade with people? Are you telling me they did not have a post on the mainland?
Boats.
Right. Where did the boats set sail from?
The land.
The mainland.
Peninsula.
Right. So you're telling me that there wasn't any kind of human dwelling on the closest land from the island?
There was, but that wasn't Tyre.
That wasn't Tyre.
Okay, how about this? You want to do a little fun searching thing. Okay, can you just type in Google history and destruction of the ancient Tyre? Can you type that in for me?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So now you know how Google does its funny little thing. It's a list underneath. It gives extra little questions you can click on if you want to know more stuff. So I clicked on the first one and it says, what is the history of the ancient Tyre? You want to read that?
What is the history of ancient Tyre? Sure.
Could you just tell us?
Tyre was built on an island, and on the neighboring mainland, it was probably founded as a colony of Sidon. Mentioned in Egyptian records of the 14th century BCE as being subject to Egypt, Tyre became independent when Egyptian influence... the thing cut off.
So there you go. So there is a group of people of Tyre that existed right on the mainland, right from it. That is what Nebuchadnezzar destroyed.
So, are you saying that when Nebuchadnezzar invaded Tyre, he did get a reward, which contradicts chapter 29?
No, that's exactly it. I don't think he got a reward. I think he went to conquer that city. I think that what happened is they saw him coming, and they said, "Well, okay, we're going to take our crap and go to our island," and that's exactly what they did. He got nothing. He probably he definitely killed some people. He probably decimated part of their city. There's probably a reason why you think there's not much of a city for 400 years. because he probably left it in ruins, right? And they retreated to their island dwelling.
So, well, people watching, you just go back and just go look this up and see if what Scott says matches with what you find, or see if what we say matches with what you find.
Fair enough. But I'm glad that we got the understanding and discussion from both sides. It was a successful conversation.
Sure. I enjoyed it regardless, man.
Likewise.
I wanted to thank you for coming on. It's kind of hard to get guests to come on. This is a pretty confrontational show. So
I love it, man. I love that you guys are willing to do this. I'm sorry we got a little heated there for a bit. But
no,
I
man.
honestly, when it can be done in love, man, like there's no hatred. I got no hatred for you guys. The truth is even in my understanding of reality, I believe God gave everyone the ability to choose how they want to live and what they want to do, and that is your right to do that. And it's your right to live that way. And so I enjoy having conversations with people that decide to live and choose differently. I am curious about it, and I like to find out why, just like you do. So likewise, I really appreciate the conversation, you guys.
Definitely, man. Facade, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, guest gets last word of the show. If there's anything you'd like to say uninterrupted or unabashed, or you'd like to promote something, it's not like we have a huge following, but you're more than welcome to do so.
Yeah, simply, I hope that more people tune into your guys' show. I hope that it grows really well. If there's one thing I would say, it would be I'd highly recommend everyone read the Bible for themselves. It's fine to have leaders you listen to, speakers you like, but it's important to find things, I think, in every speaker that you like, things that you're like, you know what, I don't 100% agree with that guy, and I think maybe this guy's got a better understanding. And it's good to just what we did. When something in the Bible doesn't line up, historically is an important one. It is important to find out, okay, well, what the heck happened there? And so I think the discussion we had on this one specifically is really good. But there's so many more to be had. And so I'd encourage everyone to read their Bible, get involved in archaeology, get involved in sciences. I believe, honestly, God created this world and he made it so that we could enjoy it and learn about it. So taking in as much knowledge and understanding as you can is a good thing. It's a fun thing. We're just exploring creation here, and I love that.
Yeah, last but not least, and nothing to top that or to overbound that, but I did want to say, next week isn't actually next week. It's Friday for a change. This Friday. So just be aware of that if anybody that's watching wants to continue watching.
We're going to be arguing about whether taxation is theft.
Yep, and then I'm going to go and unblock Wesley. And so if you'd like to come and comment next or on Friday, you're more than welcome to do so, but try to calm down a little bit on it. So you're unblocked now, Wesley. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on Friday, and we'll have a conversation about